What up, Jet fans? How you doing? It's Jets Talk now with Mike and Tom O. I put on my Insta story today. Nick Umbro is no longer part of the show just due to, issues with commitment, things of that nature. He just wasn't able to do it. So that we've got a new member of the squad. His name is Tom O'Connor. I'm very excited to have him. Yes, he's a Giants fan, but he sure knows his Jets. Tom, how you doing?
Doing great. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, I'm excited to get in some Jets talk.
Let's do it, brother. So, for those of you who don't know Tom O'Connor, I'll get his Instagram handle. You'll actually see it right here, as well as mine. Shoot us some follows for, when you're going to see all the best content coming out on a weekly basis. Tomo's been a boy of mine since, college. We both went to Rider University together. 50% of our conversation is about football. Jets, Giants, doesn't really matter. We just love the sport. We spent some time watching the games a couple weeks ago. Last week was another Jets dinger, for lack of a better word. The epitome of the call that was Gregg Williams' call at the end of the game. For those of you who didn't see it, Jets were up late, 28-24. With 13 seconds to go, and then with about 4 seconds left, Gregg Williams calls an all-out blitz, leaving an undrafted rookie free agent by the name of Lamar Jackson by himself on an island with arguably the fastest wide receiver in football, Henry Ruggs. Long story short, Ruggs burns Jackson. Ruggs gets in the end zone with about 4 seconds left. Touchdown Raiders, they go on to win 31-28. Excuse me. So, Tom, outside of that, and we're going to get into that call in a little bit, but, what are some other takeaways that you had from the game?
Honestly, the Jets just might have been their best game all year. Adam Gase honestly did a great job for the first half of the game, I would say. Now, my thoughts on the Raiders is that they're a well-coached team. I don't think they have really that much talent on there, but they do play hard every game, and the Jets gave them a real run for their money. Couple of things that really stood out to me, though. Mekhi Becton, unfortunately, I would say this was probably his worst game. Now he's battling some injuries. It's tough. It's tough when you're that big. It's hard to stay durable, and he's battling some injuries right now. And it's gonna affect your performance. But I noticed Cleveland Farrell torched the whole game. He was beating them on all the blitzes. He was just faster than him, honestly. He ended up with the game with, I believe, 2 different sacks. But yeah, Sam Darnold played a great game, which was great to see. I think he finished with like 186 yards, only 1 interception, so that's pretty nice.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to agree with you on Mekhi Becton, and it wasn't even a bad game. It was just his worst game, which
Agreed.
By all means, it was average because Mekhi Becton, who for those don't know, he's a rookie left tackle out of Louisville, 6'7", pushing 350 pounds. The dude is an absolute Mack truck. He's made his living so far this year out of just mauling defensive ends and opening up holes in the run game, while also not letting up too many pressures or sacks in the pass game, which was his main weakness coming out. Mekhi Becton, to me, was the surefire pick at 11. He let up a sack. He didn't have the greatest game opening up holes, at least until the second half, where the Jets really seemed to hit their stride using the run game on that left side. It wasn't just with Mekhi Becton. It was with Connor McGovern, as well as Pat Elflein, who has actually surprised some people. I didn't think he was all that good on the Vikings. He's actually making strides on the Jets, but it's been 2 games, so we'll see.
Absolutely.
Sam Darnold did play a good game, but by Sam Darnold's standards, and I hate to say it that way, listen, he didn't just throw the 1 pick. I think he had 2 fumbles at the same time, and 186 yards in 2020 NFL is it's nothing to brag about. So what I'm seeing from him, unfortunately, is, he is improving. The Raiders' defense isn't all that great. They're still lacking a lot of talent, but, he just looks scared. He looks like a scared quarterback, skittish. He's taken 1 too many hits. He's been hurt a couple of times this year, too many sacks, and quite frankly, I think Adam Gase has single-handedly derailed his career. Adam Gase did admittedly come out a week ago and say that he's failed in developing Sam Darnold, which is like, yeah, no shit, buddy. 2 years later, you finally come out and admit it. So, overall that, and then, Tom, we got to talk about that call at the end with Gregg Williams, was fired as of Monday morning. My God, how do you call a cover zero all-out blitz with 8 seconds left in the game, knowing that they need to throw a Hail Mary? Tom, what do you make of this call?
Well, honestly, I've always really liked Gregg Williams, to be very honest with you, up until about Wednesday, as you mentioned. It started off with the play, and I almost can't help but think that it wasn't just him. I almost feel like it was Big Brother, like someone higher up in the management saying we can't win this game type of thing, because there's no excuse for that kind of play call. I love blitzing on third and longs, or when it's a long passing down, something like that. So I'm fine with that. But the fact that you'd call a cover zero and an all out blitz, that's absolutely unacceptable. They blitzed 8 people on one play, and I mean, you see the result. And then it kind of comes down to his response after. I do things my way. That's not the point, and you don't win games that way. So that really bothered me. And Gregg Williams, no longer a fan over here.
So I'm going to pick up on one thing and piggyback off one thing that you said. It came from Big Brother, meaning you're implying basically that Joe Douglas or maybe somebody from ownership called down and said, dude, blow this for us. And it's actually been an ongoing conversation in the past few days. Is that really what you're implying? And, what about this call makes you say that?
Well, that's the only way you can defend the call, in my opinion. It's not necessarily that I truly believe that that's the situation, but I almost have to feel like or think that might have something to do with it. You would never see any coach, any defensive coordinator in the history of football. They are not doing that play with 6-7 seconds left in the game. You don't let anybody get behind you, and I mean it was atrocious, really. So I don't truly believe that's the situation. Yeah, they didn't call down and say, hey, make sure you blitz everybody, we need to lose. No, I don't think that's the situation, but I think that it's very possible that something else came in that it actually impacted him to make that decision.
Interesting. So my thoughts are, you have to defend what you're kind of saying, and I know it's not something that you personally believe, but it
could totally be a bunch of malarkey.
Right. So basically, Joe Douglas or Chris Johnson had to think to themselves, I'm going to make sure that Gregg Williams blows this game, and in order to defend our reputation, we're going to fire him and use him as the scapegoat as the reason as to why this game was blown, to mask the fact that we're truly trying to tank. With the way Christopher Johnson runs the team, I don't think he's smart enough for that. I really genuinely think with the way he's been running this team, he's not a good owner. I actually think he's absolutely stupid. A lot of his decisions dumbfound me. Hiring Adam Gase to begin with dumbfounded me. I understand that Peyton Manning gave him the okay, per se, but like for cry, you had Mike McCarthy and Matt Rule at your fingertips. You could have went with either of those guys. So, it is what it is. I don't trust it. Adam Gase didn't seem too happy about the call, but that's the other thing too. You're the head coach. You know, or should know, exactly what's going on, even though you're the offensive guru on only really running the offense. You got to know what's happening on the defensive side of the ball. You have the ability to veto a call like this, call timeout, make a change, right? Adam Gase came out and said, I wish I would have called timeout. He had no idea. What does that say about Adam Gase, Tom? What do you think? Obviously the writing's on the wall, but I wanted to hear your input.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's again, it comes down to that's unacceptable. I mean, that's right at this point. I mean, that's the entire Jets coaching staff, and that's why you can't find success in so many different areas, unfortunately. But yeah, it all stems from the head coach, and he needs to be the one to. If you don't know what's going on in the last play of the game, I don't care if you're offensive minded, you're defensive minded, special teams minded. It doesn't matter. Like, you're the head coach. If you don't know what's happening in the last game, you've messed up.
I 100% agree with that. And, Jets fans have been screaming for Adam Gase's head now for what feels like the full 2 years he's been the coach of the Jets. Down the line, as we get closer to Black Monday, that will effectively be Adam Gase's, last day as the Jets head coach. At least we hope. That's not factual, but it does seem as though the writing's on the wall. He's backed himself into a corner to be fired on January 4th, 2021. But I do want to talk a little bit more about the running game and what exactly, because listen, everyone's going to say it's because Frank Gore got hurt play too, which, listen, Frank Gore, love the man, should not be getting 20 touches a game. I've talked about it previously. Was it really the young legs of Ty Johnson and Josh Adams, or was it a mix of just actually good play calling for once and decent blocking?
Yeah, I'm really happy you brought this up. I was very much looking forward to this. So yeah, I mean, it starts off with Frank Gore, right? I mean, you can't put all the blame on him getting hurt that early in the game. The guy, like you said, he gets way too many touches every game. But what that does right there, that takes away the aspect of him being able to run in between the tackles and the Jets being able to run in between the tackles throughout the game. I think what really got that run game going was once they brought in Josh Adams, who I'll touch upon in a second, and then Ty Johnson. Just the rotation, being able to switch it up, where Ty Johnson was mostly going outside the tackle box, and Josh Adams was a lot of times running in between, A, B, C gap, wasn't going too far out, right? Josh Adams, I looked this up. His career stats for yards per carry is 4 yards per carry, and in that game, it was 9.2 yards per carry. Now, he had a really good game, but they didn't give him the ball quite enough. In my opinion, when you're in the situation that the Jets are in right now, you don't have Le'Veon Bell anymore. You don't have these bell cow running backs. You obviously have to go to running back by committee, but even more so, you have to give it to the hot hand. Josh Jacobs was the hot hand, and they did not keep giving him the ball. I think inevitably, I know what happened the last play of the game, but all in all, you control the run game, you control the play clock. Josh Adams should have gotten the ball more. You should have ran the ball more in the second half. That's my take on it, but I thought they did a really good job of, actually getting something going, which was nice to see.
Another thing I'm going to piggyback off, and obviously I love what you said about the RB by committee. It's something that me and other Jets fans out there have been clamoring for since week one. Why the flying fuck is Frank Gore at 37 years old getting 20 touches a game? Why the like in a weekly process? Why is Frank Gore getting the ball? And listen, I love Frank Gore. Adam Gase has a hard-on for Frank Gore, what seems like on a weekly basis. It was very refreshing, and the run game benefited from what you were saying. But another thing that I thought Adam Gase actually did well for once, I'll give him props where they're due. He took advantage of Mekhi Becton and the left side of that offensive line, which is the strength. Running behind George Fant and whoever rotating in at right guard is not nearly as effective. You run behind Mekhi Becton. You run behind Connor McGovern and Pat Elflein. They were able to open up holes nonstop. And again, the D-line of the Raiders is not that great, but this was an Adam Gase thing where he saw weakness in the defense and took advantage, and it benefited the team. And they really should have won the game for it. So finally, adjusting on the fly in game for the first time since you've been hired. Too little, too late, buddy, but good job. The next thing I want to get into real quick, after the game, obviously, there were a handful of press conferences. We'll start with Adam Gase, the head coach, the man, the myth, the legend, the tank god himself. Of course, didn't have all the answers. He had zero answers. He was asked about why he didn't call timeout when Gregg Williams was clearly running an all-out blitz. He said, I should have did it. Admittedly came out and said, I haven't developed Sam Darnold well. I haven't done my job here. And then on top of that, listen, he just looks defeated. He slouches at the podium. There's no conviction in his voice. He's not, he didn't come off like a leader of men. Tom, what do you think about a head coach who, granted, is probably just as frustrated as the rest of the team, but, what do you make of that? Like, what's your first initial reaction when you watch this press conference and, listen to what he has to say?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the ultimate question is, what value does he bring to the team? Is he a player's coach? It doesn't seem like they really like him that much. He's clearly not doing the strategies right if he's, not calling a timeout when they're doing an all-out blitz. He's not, keeping the team where he needs to. He should know what's going on at all times. So for me, it's really, I just don't know if he has any value whatsoever. It's hard to watch, honestly.
It is very hard to watch. I watch this man press conference game after game, and the dude's just a professional excuse maker, it seems like. Weekly basis does divvy up blame to everybody but himself for the most part. There was a point in the year where I don't have all my weapons, so what do you expect out of my offense? Or, we just got to do a better job. We got to do a better job. We're going to watch the film and we're going to come back next week ready to go. That's not even true. It's not, because you're sitting here and every week we got to watch the, like, oh my God, please, my guy, you got to go. We're going to go down to his quarterback, Sam Darnold, who the past few weeks, you watch his press conferences. It's very unpleasant, because watching Sam Darnold play, you feel for him. The talent around him is obviously subpar. The coaching around him, as we've already discussed, is extremely subpar. It's probably subpar. And he's really just not put in a position to succeed. He comes out, he says all the right things, but Tom, do you really believe it at this point? And what do you think Sam Darnold needs to do to salvage his career?
Oh, I believe in Sam Darnold, to be honest with you. You said it earlier in the podcast. I mean, when you're taking that many hits, you're getting hit all the time. It definitely affects you. I mean, you see the same thing that happened to David Carr in his career. I mean, when he was on the Texans, he was getting hit, 10 plus times a game at least. I mean, that's horrible, and it completely ruined his career. So for Sam Darnold, I mean, first of all, he needs to go somewhere else, and that's inevitable. I would imagine we're all kind of thinking.
Yeah, we're all kind of on that same train now.
Exactly. But he showed so much improvement. I thought he showed a lot more poise this weekend. Again, we keep on touching upon this. Raiders defense isn't amazing, but he still showed some poise. I mean, I think the issue is he tries to do too much constantly. I mean, that interception that he threw, he should have thrown that away. He was holding the ball in the pocket too long, and you can't always just continuously blame the poor offensive line play for these sacks. When you're sitting in the pocket for 6-7 seconds, plays are not supposed to last that long. You need to be sacked, and that's what happens inevitably every single game. I think he's doing a really good for his actual trade value for the Jets. Personally, I think that they can get a high second round pick, maybe even squeak into the first, potentially, depending on the right seller, maybe the Steelers or something along those lines. But I think the guy's he's showing improvement. He just needs to fix up a couple of things and not get so, I guess. He can't have the trigger fingers, the happy feet. He needs to settle down a little bit more. That's all.
I agree. And quite frankly, I feel like we're seeing the same thing with Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. It's the same thing where, it cost him his job, right? But ultimately,
I would say the difference between Carson Wentz and Sam Darnold is I think that Carson Wentz majority of his career has had a good offensive line. Yeah, they haven't had great weapons his whole career, but I think for him it's completely mental, and I think his situation is a little bit different to Darnold's. I think too, but I think he's terrified of getting hit so much. Like you said, he's scared. I think it just comes down to he needs to settle down and get rid of the football, make smarter decisions, throw it away when no one's open. You don't always have to make a completion.
That's a fact. And sometimes though, when your team is just that bad and your coaching is just that bad, it's natural. Like I got to put the team on my back because who else is going to do it, right? And ultimately, like we put so much emphasis on the quarterback position, and it's the hardest position in sports. It's the most important position in football. You win games in 2020 because of your quarterback. We forget it's a team sport. We forget that there's offensive linemen who need to do their job and protect the quarterback, and receivers have to go out and get open and make catches for your quarterback. And your coach needs to put your quarterback in a position to succeed. And listen, for Sam Darnold, I'm going to continuously give it his excuse, but Sam has, not done a good job protecting the ball, throwing the ball away, trying to make too many plays, cross-body throws. So yeah, it is a detriment to his game, and he'll be the first one to admit that. I do agree. He does need to go somewhere else at this point. It looks like Trevor Lawrence will be a Jet as long as the Jets go 0-16. I don't see the Jaguars winning another game. Hopefully, they don't find a way to screw that up too. But you look at Sam, and you can easily say, like I've been saying it for weeks, put Sam Darnold on the San Francisco 49ers, for example. My God, you get him in that Kyle Shanahan playbook with a run game that's competent week after week after week. You have weapons out there to get open for him. And, there's not as much pressure all of a sudden on Sam Darnold to make plays all by himself. You can make the same argument for the Steelers with all the weapons they have. They have a very quick rhythm throwing offense. And, even throw the Saints in there. Sean Payton makes any quarterback look good, right? So I just think that, I'm rooting for him regardless of where he goes. We'll see, man. I still believe in him as well. So one other thing I wanted to touch upon here, the Marcus May press conference. By the way, one more thing about Sam. His trade value to me at this point in the game, there's no shot the Jets get a first-round pick. I don't even think Joe Douglas can make it happen. He hasn't played up to that level. He just hasn't.
He hasn't. I know. It'd be so tough, and I agree. I don't think he's worth a first round pick. But I wouldn't be surprised to see someone take a chance on him. One of those aging quarterbacks, like you said, mentioned Saints. I love the 49ers, and I love the Steelers. I think is another good one. But yeah, I think it's going to be like second, third round, probably like a second and a fifth. I think you can get for him.
I think we're looking at a low second or a third, honestly, at this point in the game. Listen, Darnold's showing flashes throughout his career, but we also forget that he's been hurt 2 out of the 3 years he's played. We're not going to count last season because that was mono. That doesn't count. Stop making out with so many women, man. No, I'm just kidding. He's injury prone, and he puts himself in positions at times to get hurt. Twice it's happened this year. The first time against the Broncos, as you mentioned, he holds onto the ball too long. He had a guy wide open across the middle. He didn't hit him, and ultimately he got slammed on his shoulder. And then he did come back in the game valiantly and, still lost, is what it is. But then you try to run over Tyrann Mathieu on the Chiefs like you're Bo Jackson. Like, what are you doing?
That drove me nuts.
It's called sliding. Like, protect yourself.
They do it for a reason. That's
Right.
that's why all quarterbacks slide. You can't be taking hits like that. You don't have the same frame as these guys.
Right. But now
I would also like to see them start targeting Denzel Mims a little bit more. I can't help but bring this up, but I think Denzel Mims is very legit. He's a big
legit,
body target,
100%.
and he has deep field, deep route speed. He can really burn the top off and take people down the field, but they don't even need him to do that because he's big enough to make these catches on the inside. And I think he had 3 total targets over the weekend, 2 catches. That's just not enough. He needs to be seen more. He's getting open.
He's getting open, and he is making the plays when given the opportunity to. First of all, piggyback off Denzel Mims. His run after catch skills are actually super impressive. The man does find a way to take a short pass and make it a big gain. We've seen it a few weeks now happening over time. He does it at least once a week where he makes a short play and turns it into, a 20, 30-yard play. The other thing that he does really well, especially on the deep routes, he draws a lot of pass interference calls because you can't defend him. He's too big and he's too fast, and he's got hands like glue so far. Pray that it keeps going. But when you're a DB, you're most likely not as big as him. You're most likely not as fast as he is. The only opportunity you have to make a play is knowing where the ball's going to go before he does. And, you gotta tug him a little bit, or else he's going to make the catch and he's most likely going to burn you for a TD. Sooner or later, he will get those opportunities. It's just a matter of time. Maybe not this year because Adam Gase doesn't know what his good players can do. But I would say next year you get a competent coach in there who knows how to take advantage of his skill set. Just to kind of piggyback off that, he's definitely a building block for the future. Mekhi Becton, we've touched on a lot. He's definitely a building block. I want to bring up a guy who's in year 2. He was drafted 3rd overall 2 years ago, Quinnen Williams. And I'm just going to preface this by saying in the draft that year, I literally said I would be okay with the Quinnen Williams pick, but I really want Josh Allen, the edge rusher, who's now in Jacksonville. They're actually doing some really good things. He's making plays, but Quinnen Williams in his 2nd year is already drawing comparisons to Aaron Donald. He's not there yet, 100% not there yet, but he's making a lot of plays this year. And you can tell that week after week, he's doing something to show you that he's getting better and better and better and actually living up to that number 3 selection. Tom, what do you think about Quinnen Williams?
I think you said it perfectly. Honestly, to be honest, when he came out and they took him at number 3, I did not understand the hype behind Quinnen Williams. We saw him in college at Alabama. Guy played great. He was dominating people. He was throwing them off the ball. The lineman couldn't block him. That comes from just being bigger, stronger, more physically sound. He plays with, a little bit of the fire in the belly. He really wants to hurt the person across from him. But he looked atrocious last year. And my whole thing was he just doesn't have the experience yet. He's only going to get better. I don't think those Aaron Donald comparisons are very good at all, to be honest with you.
No, I agree.
I think that he's a different type of player, and that's more of the reason why. But he's only going to get better with experience. He started 1 year at Alabama, got drafted 3rd overall, and was thrown right into it. That you can't really do that with a player like that. You see what's happening with Dwayne Haskins. He started 1 year as well.
Right.
Completely different positions, understand, but he started 1 year. You can't have 1 year of experience against playing high-level football players. So with Quinnen Williams, I love him, and I'm excited to see what the future has. I think he's only going to get better.
I totally agree. I agree with Quinn about the Aaron Donald comparison. We're not even remotely close to there yet. Let's relax. But he's making a lot of plays, just bullying the center. He's generating pressure. I think he just knows what he's doing more. I think last year, just being thrown into the wolves, like you said, he was unable to – he wasn't sure what was going on in front of him at all times. And I think now that he's played enough football, you're getting the sense that he's not thinking as much as he's just letting loose and play. And I think that's the big thing with a lot of guys coming into the pros, no matter what position it is. You got to get comfortable with your position in the pros. Everyone's going to be bigger, stronger, faster. The plays are going to be a little bit more complex. You're not going to be able to see what's going on at all times like you were in college where you were just bullying people. Quinnen Williams is that guy. where you can tell that he's playing looser and he knows what's going on. He knows the schemes. He knows where the ball's going to go. He sees plays developing faster in front of him. And I think it's just allowing him to play a little bit more loosely. So hopefully,
great locker room guy too. Great personality.
100%. I was laughing when he was in that one interview last year. First of all, the braces sent me. The man had braces still, and I was just like, oh my God, we literally drafted what looks like a high school kid with the size of 3 men. And no, he sneezed and then blessed himself. Like, that was awesome. Like, I was like, this guy is actually really, really funny. I do want to address the biggest rumor that's come out in regards to the Jets head coaching search. Bill Cowher. Boomer Esiason came out, I believe it was on Monday, and he was talking about how he had a conversation with Bill Cowher, who is a big part of the NFL today, as we all know, and he's been doing it now for about 15 years. He's really good at it, still really close to the game, obviously. Bill Cowher was talking about how he can see, Boomer was coming out and talking about how Bill Cowher could come out and coach the Jets because he sees them as a very attractive job. Potential number 1 overall pick, generational talent at quarterback, and, a lot of draft capital to play with, a lot of cap space to play with. It's an opportunity for a guy to really come in and put his stamp on the team when it comes to the personnel. So, Tom, first things first, is this really just a rumor, or do you think this might actually have some legs to stand on here?
To be honest, I think it's just a rumor. I think it is a very attractive position, and I totally agree with that. Like you said, you're getting a generational talent quarterback, most likely with the first overall pick. You have these building blocks that you can kind of work with: Quinnen Williams, Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims, even Marcus May I'll throw in there. You have these positions and these people to work with, but to be honest, I don't think he's coached since 2006 was his last year, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
I think that, I know he's been around the sport. He's a commentator now. He's always seen what's going on. He's too outdated, if you ask me. I think right now you need a revolutionary football mind. Those are the coaches that are succeeding. Like you said, Kyle Shanahan, or the Jets, the Rams head coach, Sean McVay. These guys are, thinking outside the box. And I think what you see with a lot of these new coaches that come in, I think with the one exception of being, I would say, John Gruden, I think he's really, really adapted and changed to like his style. But I don't see Bill Cowher being a good fit, and I don't see him actually coming back to coaching after having such a, amazing, successful career with the Steelers.
Okay. And you know what? Listen, I'm going to agree with you. I think it is just a rumor. I can't see Bill Cowher leaving the gig he has right now with the NFL today. And, there's definitely some pros. Like I'm going to, Bill Cowher on the pro side. Let's say this actually held true and Bill Cowher did come in to coach the Jets. This is all hypothetical. Bill Cowher is respected. He's a culture guy. You know what you're getting with him. You know who the boss is. You know exactly, and, he's tough. He knows how to lead. He's a leader of men. And I think when you look at the recent success of these head coaches over the past couple of years, culture guys who come in and change the locker room for the better before even making plays on the field. 2 examples I can think of right off the bat within the AFC East. Sean McDermott, within a 3-year span, has turned Buffalo from the laughingstock of the NFL into a very respectable AFC contender. Not to mention, he's making Josh Allen look really, really good in a league now where you need your quarterback to be making plays consistently to win. And then Brian Flores. Listen, it's still early with Brian Flores, but you turn a team who picked number 1 overall or number 2 overall right before you got hired, 2-year swing, you're 8-4, and you're on track to make the playoffs. He turned that defense into a monster unit. That culture is winning football always. You know what you're getting on offense. You're going to get a sound running game with some nice, very good bag of mixed play calls. Props to Chan Gailey, former Jet, figures. And you bring the Patriot way to Miami, and it's showing dividends now, turning them into what's a very sound, competitive football team. They're a playoff team this year. Their defense is going to win a lot of games for them. Are they going to make noise in the playoffs? I don't know if they're there just yet. I think Tua needs another year under his belt to get some good football in and get up more reps. But you look at those guys, like that's what's going to win in 2020. It's not just all about the offensive mind and getting your quarterback to throw 40 to 50 touchdowns every year and 5,000 yards. Yes, that's part of it. But you got to have a culture in place, which Adam Gase has failed miserably to do. Every player hates him, right? Jamal Adams. Tom, I don't know if you heard this, but their starting right guard, Alex Lewis, hasn't played the past couple of weeks, but it isn't injury related. He's been benched. And I think there was an altercation between him and Adam Gase where I'm only quoting another reporter when I say this, so I'm not just saying this. Alex Lewis came out and said, I should have left when Jamal did, which that would reside with me as a head coach. And I think Adam just said, you know what, then get the fuck out. And now he's on the bench, which, you know, is what it is. I don't know if that's something you heard, man.
Yeah, I actually, this is the first time I've heard that. And I mean, honestly, I like that Adam Gase did that. And kind of, to be very honest with you, I think that kind of sets the tone and things like that. But you can't be such a hard ass when people don't like you. Unfortunately, you have to earn their trust. You have to earn their respect. You have to get them to like you before you can be doing acts like that. I think if you were on, you know, the Patriots, someone said to Bill Belichick and he said, go sit down on the bench right now. You're done for the year. That would be a completely different story because those players in that locker room respect him. That's a little bit different. Now, Brian Flores, I love Brian Flores. What he's doing in Miami is incredible. I mean, their roster still, and people can make the argument because people are playing so well, but still a terrible roster, if you ask me. They got some good pieces in there to really buff it. You know, Byron Jones. They already have Xavier Howard on defense. Yep. Defense looks incredible. But that kind of makes me think as well, right? They didn't just come out and get their quarterback right away. How many picks do they have next year's draft? They have 2 first-round picks, right?
Yeah. So,
I mean, it kind of leads you to think if the Jets get Trevor Lawrence, is everything fixed? Is everything dandy? You get Bill Cowher, Trevor Lawrence. Now are the Jets the team to worry about?
The answer is no, and definitely not in 2021. But that's definitely a good it's a good point of conversation that we can have in a bit. But I want to make one more example of a culture shock in the NFL. That's your team, man. That's the New York Giants. I'm the biggest Joe Judge fan, and I didn't know who he was until the start of this past season. The Giants have consistently, I'd say come around like week 5, you started to see the improvement on offense, on defense. Now it's translating to wins. So with Joe Judge in such a short span of time, turning a team that, you know, wasn't, you know, a losing team to a team that was competitive, but they were still losing to a team that was right there. And, you know, now it's finally translating into W's. And listen, you're a Giants fan. You probably know better than I do, but you gotta give Joe Judge the credit here. Like, what have you seen from him to say, like, okay, this Giants team is for real and the culture is there for the long haul?
I mean, I think we've had some decent players for a couple of years. Again, it's not the greatest roster, but honestly, the players just bought in. I think that kind of relates to what you were saying about Bill Cowher earlier. He kind of comes in, he makes that staple. He's the kind of coach that players would buy into because they respect him. With Joe Judge, it's interesting to see because he doesn't have that, you know, that repertoire that Bill Cowher has. But
right,
you know, you see it. The players want to play for him. You know, he's a hard ass when he needs to be a hard ass. He lets them off, you know, for holidays, whatever it may be. But he balances it out, like, you know, very well. And I think that's the challenge of becoming an NFL coach in today's NFL. because it is very different from, 10, 20, 30 years ago, where people just listen to their coach. People are divas nowadays. The players want money. They don't really care what you tell them to do. So it's just all about buying in for the players. So whoever the coach is for the Jets next, they just got to buy in, and I'm excited for it.
Give me 3 names that you like to coach the New York Jets.
Not going to know the names that well, but I really like the coordinator from the Chiefs. I mean, for me, if you're getting Trevor Lawrence, you got to be getting him. Eric Bieniemy, yes. I think that's like a must. Honestly, I think that's the only person you guys should sign and focus on. There's a lot of candidates, but he's the one. You get Trevor Lawrence, you're taking him with that first pick. Get him a new coach that knows what he's doing, that coaches, probably the MVP this year, MVP 2 years ago, and the Super Bowl MVP. It's a no-brainer if you ask me. It's just really a matter of if this position is that attractive to Eric Bieniemy.
So my thing is with Eric Bieniemy, what is he doing? Because a lot of people respect him around the league, which is amazing, obviously. I've seen a couple of interviews. He really comes off as a leader, a guy who speaks with conviction. He seems to have a handle on his players, but he's not calling the plays. And it's not his offense, it's Andy Reid's offense, and Andy Reid is also calling the plays. So what exactly is he doing to this Chiefs offense to make them as effective as they are on a consistent basis?
That's a great question.
That's kind of my thing. What exactly from an X's and O's standpoint is Eric Bieniemy doing to produce on the offensive side of the football? Now, granted, I'm not at the Chiefs practices every day. So for all I know, hey, he might be running the show, which is maybe why
this is not his offense.
Right. But that's exactly it. And he's not play calling on game days. Very seldom do you see him do that. But listen, he's a hot name. Obviously, he's very well respected around the league. Guys seem to love him, fans, media, players. So listen, I'm not going to be mad, but that question is going to reside in my mind until we know for sure that the Jets are going to be winning, especially with a guy like Trevor Lawrence. Like, that's the biggest thing. I prioritize 3 things when it comes to head coaching searches. First thing is is he on the same page with your general manager? And people don't realize exactly how important this is. If you're a general manager like Joe Douglas, who lives and prays by players in the trenches, and you bring in a guy who just loves his skill players, there's a disconnect. How's that going to work, right? Then, the second thing, culture, like we already touched upon, so I'm not going to get too crazy into it. Then the third thing is, listen, your quarterback is the guy, right? People are going to talk about 2 people more than anybody else on your football team. It's the head coach and the quarterback. And you're going to be tied together, especially because now more than ever, you're seeing head coaches draft their own guy at quarterback, especially right as they get hired. So does Eric Bieniemy, for example, even like Trevor Lawrence, or does he prefer Justin Fields, right? Does Joe Douglas prefer Trevor Lawrence when Eric Bieniemy prefers Justin Fields? And I hope these are conversations that they have prior to even making this hire. At this point in the game, you have the number 1 overall pick. You know what the consensus is going to be. Is the head coach you bring in going to be on board with that? And it's the root of a lot of issues with a lot of teams where, for example, the Jets, when they drafted Geno Smith, Rex Ryan wanted nothing to do with him, but John Idzik needed to save his job, So
that's the thing with Joe Douglas, though. I mean, what is he doing? I almost feel like it, whatever. I mean, do you like Joe Douglas, first of all?
I'm a big Joe Douglas fan. I am.
Okay.
I think he has a plan long-term that doesn't require a quick fix. I think the last few general managers that the Jets have tried to implement this quick fix with big money free agency signings and drafting quarterbacks when, we can argue that those guys weren't the guy. But Joe Douglas is a guy that I know for a fact he's not going to fix this team in 2021. It might not even all be better in 2022, but I can expect him just based on the way he's drafted and the way he's, handling free agency and the kind of culture he wants to bring in. I think he has potential to be the long-term guy, general manager. It's just a matter now of who's going to be your head coach and, is he going to coach Trevor Lawrence? What do you think? It seems like you disagree.
No, not at all. I mean, honestly, I think it's very hard to find a head coach and a general manager at different times. Is kind of my thoughts with it. Joe Douglas he's a Jet. He's been there. He knows what goes on and behind those closed doors. You're bringing somebody else in that yes, in theory they have to Joe Douglas is that person's boss, but they have to get along and they have to have the same mindset with it. Kind of like you said, if Joe Douglas comes out and wants to do one thing in the draft, and then Eric Bieniemy comes in, and he, like you said, he doesn't even want Trevor Lawrence, that's just not going to work. I think it's just tough. I mean, I think the Giants were in a similar situation for so long. I don't really like Dave Gettleman, to be honest with you, and I wanted him gone. So it's a similar kind of thing, but at the same time, he's done a really good job drafting. I'm sorry, he's done a really good job with free agency. He's done a poor job drafting. I think that Joe Douglas has done a very good job drafting, and I can kind of make the argument. I think he's been a little bit stingy with his money in free agency, but not that that's a bad thing. Not that that's a bad thing.
Right. But my thing with Joe Douglas, and listen, I totally agree with free agency. The one thing I didn't like was not bringing back Robbie Anderson. And we can all know now that the Jets very much miss Robbie Anderson. But we know clear cut how this team is going to be built.
Definitely heard Jets.
You're going to be building inside out from the trenches to beyond. And you're going to build through the draft. You're going to bring in young, tough, blue-collar guys who are going to come in with the same mindset who want to win. And you see that with Denzel Mims. You see that with Mekhi Becton. You didn't draft Quinnen Williams, but Quinnen Williams kind of falls into the category when it comes to the mindset. Those types of building blocks. And I think it was smart the way he handled the offensive line in free agency. He didn't throw too much money at it. I think it's very difficult to find a very good veteran offensive lineman these days because you're paying those guys. Offensive linemen now are just – they don't fall on trees, which is why I was so high on the pick last year. That was the best offensive line class, in my opinion, that we've seen in a long time, dude.
And Mekhi was at the top of that class.
Yeah. And I thought to myself, CeeDee Lamb looks really good, but we need the linemen. We got to find a way to protect our quarterback and get some type of running game. And I think against the Raiders, we actually did see the fruits of that labor with Mekhi Becton and that running game starting to finally come into fruition. So, if I'm a head coach, I know that going in, interviewing with Joe Douglas and saying, dude, just give me the blueprint and let's do this thing. Because, it's very clear cut what the plan is this time around. And that's just my opinion. But, with that being said, it's actually going to do it, Tom. Obviously, it's the first episode, and I'm very happy to have you on, man. It's been a pleasure. Is there any last words that you'd like to give to the viewers out there?
Oh yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Definitely fun to do this. But last words: give Josh Adams the rock.
Hey, give Josh Adams the rock. My last words are going to be run behind Mekhi. Run behind, big ticket. But that's going to do it. Jets Talk with Mike and Tomo, or Umbro and Tomo. That's the name. That's what it is. Get used to it. Love it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, and feel free to leave the comments below. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Have a great rest of your night.